Hey everybody, it's Chris. I hope you've all been well. Once again, I've had a little bit of a break from YouTube. We've had a lot of projects going on, as I've mentioned before, but now with the nicer weather, the outdoor projects have come into play now. So I have a lot of different passions, if you will. So I love to paint, I love house remodeling, I love gardening. So it's kind of hard sometimes to figure out what am I going to do next. And today was a beautiful day out, but I was like, gosh, I really want to paint because I haven't done it in quite a while. So I'm actually working on a commission for a friend today. So we are going to do flip cut pours on all 4 panels. Once it's completed, I'm going to stencil the Tree of Life stencil on the panels, and then they will get a coat of resin to finish them off. So the colors we're using today are parchment, raw sienna, and we're using a red oxide, Naples yellow. This is burnt umber. This is raw umber. And then I'm also using turquoise. So these panels are 10 by 10, and we're just gonna do a simple flip cup with them. So the first thing that I want to do is to spritz my cups with a little bit of WD-40 silicone spray. And what that will do is, I kind of say that it's like Pam for paint. So what it will do is to help release the paints from the cups so that we don't have a lot of waste. Now this is a silicone. So if you're going to use this in your cups, you need to make sure that you completely clean the surfaces before you try to resin. And all I do to do that is I use Windex. I make sure that they're completely dry. I wait at least a week to make sure that the paint is dried and cured. And I use Windex. I spritz them with Windex, use white paper towels, wipe them down, let them dry completely, because you'll find that the Windex kind of makes the paint a little bit sticky, if you will, on the surface. So I just make sure that they're completely dry, and then I go back and do it again. Generally, after 2 cleans with the Windex and paper towels, they are good to go. There's not a lot of silicone in here. I mean, there might be like just a tiny little, you're not even gonna be able to see it. There might be just a tiny little bit of the oil at the bottom of it, but it's not enough that I'm creating this like oil slick on top of the painting. So it works really well for me. And I like to get all the paint out of my cups and get as much value out of my paints as I can. These are 10 by 10 wood panels, cradled wood panels. I purchased these from CC DIY, and I will put the link down in the description of the video. And if you use Chris, K-R-I-S-S, it's good for a $5 coupon off of a $40 purchase. So I used the blue dry lock tape up here on the top. And you can see that I just came right up to the very edge of it. Let me see if I can give you a better picture of this. So I came up right to the very edge of what the panel is that we're pouring on with my blue tape. And then I used a plastic putty knife and scraped it down along the edge kind of to burnish it and make sure that it's on there tight. And then this is just regular blue painter's tape. And what this does is to keep the sides clean, but it will also allow me to do resin on the top of the panels when it's done. And then I can just peel that off and I will have this wood showing through on the sides. So that's what I've done to all 4 panels. As I said, these are 10 by 10 panels from CC DIY. I think you'll find that they're very good value. These are, I believe, 1.5 inches deep. So it's impossible to find a cradled wood panel locally. Michael's and Hobby Lobby are my local places that I have. And the only thing that they have are just the little 1/2 inch ones, which is fine, but I just feel like the thicker the panel is, I just feel like it's a nicer look. So I'm going to start by putting parchment in all of my cups. And then we're going to go in with some raw sienna. And I'm not really trying to layer these, I'm just kind of squeezing them in because these are flip cups. So I feel like this is going to help to kind of create some really cool cells and effects into the paintings. And this is the Naples yellow. And Kim wanted to make sure that that color was represented. So I'm gonna make sure I squeeze in a nice amount of that. This is my burnt umber. can already see that it's really cool looking. And this is raw umber. These, I believe, are 5-ounce cups. And then finally, I'm going to put in the turquoise. That might have had a little chunky in it. All right, so let me show you one of the cups here. Isn't that amazing? Okay, so I'm also working with my new phone today. So I'm really hoping I can do some cool stuff for you guys. I'm gonna go ahead and flip these over because they're flip cups. Now, I'm using my pouring medium in the paints, and my pouring medium is 4 cups of strained Floetrol, a cup of glue all, a half a cup of pouring medium, and I use the Liquitex pouring medium, and then a little bit of water, and I mix that with my paints. But you'll see that it really creates some amazing cells. Now see, I have the ability, I believe, to zoom in on one of these so you can kind of see up close and personal when I pull it. And then hopefully you'll be able to see some of the cells. So I'm gonna switch and put you just on one of these guys so you can see what they look like. So hang on a second. All right, so hopefully I have you really in close for a bird's eye view of what I'm gonna do here. I'm just gonna show you the one panel because all 4 panels will be treated the same way. I'll lift off the cup and then I'll go ahead and tilt them until I have what I want. So I'm not gonna have you watch the whole thing, but I will show you how they all look at the end. So let's see what this guy's looking like. You can kind of see down here, we already have a few cells. And I kind of like to do a little bit of an angle. So I think I'm gonna go this way with it. There we go. Now you can see I still have some paint in here, and you can see that my turquoise kind of got lost. So I'm kind of thinking that I'm gonna go ahead and lay this right in here so that I have some of that turquoise. Not to say that it's not going to show through once we start to tilt, but it all just depends on where that paint lands. It's kind of crazy how it happens, and they will all look absolutely different. So you can see as I pulled the cup off, we've already got some cool things going. I'm just gonna tilt this over a tiny bit because I feel like my paint is already starting to slide off this corner here. And I just wanna make sure that I don't lose all this really cool paint. It's interesting too, the colors that will show through, and you'll see that they all will not have the same color showing. It's quite interesting. Even though I squeezed the cups, I feel like the same exact way, each one will look different. So what I'm gonna do with this guy, I have my little torch here, and I'm just gonna go ahead and pop the bubbles. And I do hold my torch away from the paint because all I want to do is to torch the bubbles. I don't want to create any really crazy effects in here. I'm gonna pull this guy back a little bit so that I'm not dripping on those other panels. Okay, so I really love the turquoise. I'm glad I put that stripe through there. I know that Kim really loves the Naples yellow, so I definitely want to make sure that I try to retain that. So I think what I'll do is just kind of move it around, and I'm just gonna try to go off of this corner down here first. I'm hoping that you guys will be able to see it, but I think I'm gonna have to leave it kind of low so that you will be able to see it. Okay. And then I'm just gonna kind of let the paint flow down here to this bottom edge because I do wanna make sure that I keep that really pretty turquoise in there too. You can also kind of create a dam with your fingers to help so that you don't lose all of the paint. And then I do want to kind of creep really slow over here on this bottom corner because I think it's really pretty and I don't necessarily want to lose it. And you'll find too, sometimes the paints kind of roll over on themselves. So I find if I go a little bit slower, sometimes I can retain some of that. Okay, I'm gonna create a dam though, just so that I don't lose all of that paint. And I will go back the other way too, which will help kind of pull that design back in and just let that fall off of the edge like so. And then while I have my paint here, I'm gonna go ahead and go up to this upper corner. just like that. And then I'm gonna go ahead and kind of stretch this over a bit and let some of that paint go off the top. Just like that. All right, let's go ahead, set this back down where you can see it. And there we go. All right, so there's the first one. And I'm going to go ahead and continue to do the rest of them, and then I will speed this up so you don't have to watch the whole thing. Okay, so I've got all 4 tilted. You can see that they all look absolutely different. I will send a picture to Kim and see if she likes these. I do feel like maybe I could add a little bit more of a stripe effect, I guess, on some of these and get a little bit more of that dark brown, because I feel like it really showed through on the first one, and on these other ones it kind of got lost, but it could possibly come back up through the paint too. So all right, guys, so that is the first part of this little project. These will dry for about a week, and then I will clean them and put the stencil on and resin. So I will let you see the next step of the process as soon as these are ready to go. The panels have dried for about a week now, and they've been in my studio with the dehumidifier running. So I feel like they're dry and cured enough so that I can go ahead and go to the next step. So the next step for this piece is to stencil it. I'm using the Tree of Life stencil from Cutting Edge Stencils. And one of the reasons I really love this stencil is because I feel like it's not super masculine, it's not super feminine. It's just kind of the best of both worlds. So if you're using it as a piece like Kim will be doing in her living room, where, you know, the whole family is going to see it, it's not something that's going to be super feminine or super masculine. So I just feel like it's a really great stencil. Plus, Tree of Life, it's kind of a cool name, right? So what I've done up to this point, I went ahead and used my Windex clean paper towels to clean the panels, because as you remember, we put a little bit of silicone in the bottom of the cups before we flipped. So I wanted to make sure that the piece was clean. So I did that. I also positioned my panel so that they were all lined up with the center line going both directions lined up. And then I did put my stencil down just to kind of get an idea of how I wanted it to lay on the piece. I then took it into the other room, and then I used this Loctite spray adhesive. This is a repositional adhesive, so this is what I use on my stencils. I sprayed the back of it, and then I came in and lined it up. the easiest way to line it up, and most stencils that I've used for art projects usually have some reference lines so you can kind of figure out if it is centered, if it's in the right spot. And this one, I used the lines on the panels and made sure that I was kind of in the center of these circles and obviously on the lines of these outer petals. Now going up and down was a little bit easier because I had the reference of this petal in the center, and then I had another circle as I came out further. So it may not be absolutely perfect, but if you can get it pretty darn close, no one's ever going to know anyway. The next thing that I want to do then is to actually stencil. And I find that the best gold that I have found is the Extreme Sheen 24 karat gold. What I find is this is a more opaque paint, so it actually covers the design and it's not too translucent, because I feel like it does need to have, you know, that iridescent quality to it, but I don't want to totally see the paint underneath it. So I'm going to use my 24 karat gold Extreme Sheen. I have a large stenciling brush. You can also use a dense foam roller and roll over this. I feel like I have a little bit more control with a stencil brush. And since this is just one panel, or excuse me, it's just one stencil on 4 panels, I'm going to go ahead and use my stencil brush so I have a really nice design when I'm done. So I'm just gonna go ahead and start with my little plastic plate here that has been used many times and washed. And I've already shook my paint, and I'll just go ahead and put some out onto my plate here. And then I take my brush, let me see if I can get this a little closer for you, and I get the gold paint on it, like so, and then I'm just gonna tap it off over here. So I want my paintbrush to be loaded, but I don't want it to be saturated with the gold. So just like that, and then I'm just going to start pouncing up and down on the stencil. Now, as I move along and as I get closer to the end, I will lift and make sure that everything is covered. It's probably a good idea to stay in one general area and work your way out so that you don't forget a spot. But again, that's one of the reasons why I will lift it kind of towards the end, just to make sure that I have nice coverage, that the design is all intact, and I've got it dark enough. You can also go back and add a little more shading in some areas if you like. So if you want it a little bit darker, say like in the center portion, and then if you wanted to do some of the leaves a little bit darker, you could go back and add a second coat to it as well, which I have done that before too, and that looks really nice. So I'm just gonna go ahead and continue to stencil this. I will speed this up so you don't have to watch the whole thing. And I will probably cut some pieces out because I'm not exactly sure how long this is gonna take me. So here we go. Okay, so I have everything completed. I did go back, I kind of decided as I was working with this that I wanted some of the areas to be a little bit more transparent. So I just went over those one time, but then I did come back like in the center, in these circles, at the bases of these branches. I did go back and do kind of a second layer, as well as these leaves out here on the edges, just to make those a little bit more pronounced. And then I also added some highlights to some of the leaves. And you can tell by looking at the stencil that I have paint around all of the areas. So I'm pretty confident that I got everything. So now I'm gonna go ahead and peel this back, and so you guys can see what it looks like once it's fully stenciled. And I think this is probably the best part, when you get to see the design. There we go. Now, I will tell you that it probably looks better at my angle. I'm gonna pick one of these up so you can get a little bit closer view of it. One thing with the 24 karat gold, and let me see if I can get there's the sheen. So one of the things with this paint is that it does kind of have an iridescent quality to it. So depending on how the light hits it, you're going to see it more pronounced. So as you're looking at it flat, I'm sure as I revealed it, you're like, oh, she missed a lot of it. It's not even there, but it is, which is one of the reasons why I like this paint. Just because I think it gives it more interest and definitely more depth once the resin gets on it. So this dried really nicely, and I ended up getting some really nice cells in it. Let me see. This one's a really pretty piece too, with this really deep rust color. And with that Naples yellow, it really did some nice things, especially right up here at this top corner. I got some really cool cells with it. So hopefully she's really pleased with this. Now, since this is just a light coating of gold paint on here, I probably could just let this dry a couple of hours and it'll be ready to have the resin put onto it. Normally, if I'm pour painting something, I would never, I would never let it just dry a couple of hours and then put the resin on top of it. But because the base is dry and I've just put a light layer of gold on it, I really could probably go ahead and resin this in the next couple of hours. But this will sit here and dry a little bit, and then it'll get a coat of resin. I'll go back and take all of that lovely tape off of the sides that you see there, and she'll be ready for her new home. So I would say probably about, it probably took me about 12 to 13 minutes to do this piece for the stenciling, which isn't too bad. And I really do feel it just adds another layer of interest to the art piece. Okay guys, I'm gonna go ahead and leave it at that for now. As I said, this will get resined and then it'll be ready for its new home. I do have other videos on how to resin. Just take a look through my library and you'll find those. If you have any questions about that, I'm happy to answer that as well. Hope you have a great day. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.